All right. Can you hear me? I think we can start. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you hear me right? Because I'm hearing a huge echo. Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Virtual Executive Series. My name is Alfonsina Farias, and I'm a Senior Program Manager at University of New York. And I'm very excited to introduce to you our next guest on the series, and it's Yvette Baez. Yvette is the VP of Business Development at Univision, and she's also a board member at JNU York. So she's going to tell us a little bit about her career, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So please, on the right side of your screen, write any questions, type it on the chat, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can. So please welcome Yvette Baez.
Thank you so much for having me. Everybody, thank you for joining virtually. I know that this is a very stressful time for many of us as we're trying to figure out how to work from home in a crisis. So thank you for taking the time and making yourself available to be here with us today. Alfonsina, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized. So you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself and about your career at Univision.
Thank you so much. So I'll start by introducing myself the way that many Latinos do. I'm Yvette Baez. I'm Dominican. I grew up in New York City and I live in New Jersey. I've been in New Jersey for long enough that I should consider myself a New Jerseyan, although I don't, I still consider myself a New Yorker. I grew up in Washington Heights, and my Dominican culture and value system is still very near and dear to my heart and really defines who I am and how I behave and show up every day, both personally and professionally. I started off at a very young age knowing that I wanted to go into marketing, although I didn't know what to call it at the time. I was fascinated by many, I'm going to date myself, but many of you might remember the show Who's the Boss? And the mom, the character, Judith Light, worked at an advertising agency, and I thought that I wanted to do that. I thought that I wanted to work in and I went to school prepared to have a career in advertising, and I got a degree from a very unique program at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Essentially, you can make your own degree. The program is officially known as Bachelor's Degree with Individual Concentration, and I hold a degree entitled Minority Affairs in Advertising. So at the age of 17, I drew the schematic for the rest of my career. It included being able to develop my own curriculum. I had to pitch basically to have this topic approved, and I knew that I wanted to focus on brown people in advertising. And so I wrote a thesis about the evolution of Hispanics and African Americans in American advertising and basically mapped out my career for the rest of it. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I did not deviate very much from that plan that I wrote when I was 17 or 18 years old. I said I wanted to become a product manager or brand manager at Procter & Gamble. Instead, it ended up being Reckitt Benckiser. So I finished my bachelor's degree, went back, got an MBA in marketing, and did go off into a career in brand marketing. My first job was in Racine, Wisconsin, working on skincare for Skintimate and Edge, which are shave gel brands, which many of you know. I spent, 12 to 15 years working in and around marketing, and in the last 10 years transitioned into media. So I still, for the most part, worked in a marketing discipline, although I started to work for first BT and subsequently Univision, where I've been almost 9 years. So I am a career marketer. I've spent my career working on everything from over-the-counter drugs like Advil and Robitussin to alcoholic beverages, which hopefully many of you don't recognize, like Hennessy, cognac in the U.S. And again, I've had the privilege of working on brands that are highly relevant to both African-American and Hispanic consumers, because that's where my heart has always been, is making sure that brands, products, speak to the needs of the underrepresented consumers of the United States.
Beautiful. And I'm a proud Dominican too, so I had to say it. So why don't you tell us a little bit of like how do you landed a job at Univision, and what are the skills of somebody in marketing to work at a place like Univision?
Sure. So I think at the end of the day, marketing is about being able to make a consumer have a desire for your brand, whether it's a product or a service. If you think about Univision, the consumer is obviously every Hispanic in the United States, and many non-Hispanics. Soccer is a big part of what we do, and many people that don't even speak Spanish tune into our soccer because we have the most soccer anywhere in the United States. The product that we sell is obviously the brand itself. Many people think of Univision as a network. So in New York, it's Canal 41 or Channel 41 for many of us. But Univision is actually much more than that. It literally spans across multiple platforms. It's a way for Hispanics to engage with their countries of origin. Many of our viewers come to us for news because our news product is something that you're not going to get on CNN, NBC, or Fox just because the news is told from the perspective of country of origin. So again, we think about Univision as being this one-dimensional brand that's a network when really it's a product, it's a service, and for many U.S. Hispanics, it's a lifeline for them to connect both with their community in the United States and where they live locally, as well as back to the country that they came from originally.
Excellent. And in your role at Univision, what would you say are the metrics of success? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we're an ad sales revenue driven business, which means that we make money by selling advertising. And in my role, supporting the sales organization, really the metric of success is how much can we sell to advertisers to be able to support and sustain our business. As many of you may or may not know, most advertising-based companies, whether it's a digital platform like Facebook or a network like ABC, CBS, or NBC, without ad revenue, we can't sustain the business. So the primary metric of success for us is, are we selling enough advertised to offset the cost of the business? Because we have such a trusted brand with Hispanics, the other key metric for us is ensuring that we maintain a trust and loyalty with our core consumers. At last measurement, we have one of the most trusted brands in the United States among Hispanics. We are actually more trusted than the Catholic Church, if that puts it into perspective how important Univision is as a brand to Hispanics in this country.
Thank you. And actually, now that you something that I'm very curious, and I think it relates to a lot of Hispanics or anybody who's listening about your story. What's the challenge that you have had in your professional career, and what lesson did that taught you? How do you overcome that?
I think one of the biggest lessons has been that what people don't understand, sometimes they're afraid of. And while it would seem that everyone wants to speak to U.S. Hispanics, the reality is that there are 250 brands on our air, and there are thousands of them that don't advertise in Spanish today. And it's not for a lack of a desire or a need to want to speak to us. It's that many people are scared to get it wrong. I think there are many, many examples of brands that have either, by accident or just by not knowing, have made a misstep with this audience. And part of what we pride ourselves in is that we can be a strategic partner to help brands understand how to connect, where to connect, and why to connect. And most of what I do, honestly, is educate people on U.S. Hispanics. And I get to sell Univision later, because if I can sell them on the importance of this consumer segment as a revenue generator for their brand, the rest is a lot easier. We like to say that the value of the U.S. consumer is larger than some countries. So if you look at the GDP, or the gross domestic product, of U.S. Hispanics as a country, we're actually larger in value than Canada and Brazil. So you don't think about U.S. Hispanics being that important, but at 63 million and counting, we are worth trillions of dollars to the American economy and to brands who choose to engage with Hispanics through Univision.
Yeah, it's really impressive. We have a question on the chat. Can you speak to your utilization of mathematics and marketing analytics in your career, specifically the analysis of obtained from social media?
Yes. So interestingly enough, the first part of my career was all about data and analytics. Because as a brand manager, you're literally thinking, all right, think about Lysol. This is a great analogy. Lysol spray could not have anticipated COVID-19. So somebody on the Lysol brand is looking at supply and demand and saying, okay, we usually sell 5 million bottles at cans of Lysol in the United States, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and everybody's scrambling. Think about having to forecast demand for a product, which right now, still 9 weeks later, I haven't found a single can. Nobody knows how long this is going to go. And the Lysol brand manager is trying to figure out how many more cans of Lysol am I going to have to produce to meet the demand, but the demand is unknown. So the first part of my career was highly data-driven and very analytical. Surprisingly enough, the second part of my career in media is equally analytical. It's just different. I'm glad that the person that asked the question framed it about social specifically. We might produce a piece of content tied to one of our shows. Let's call it the Latin Grammy. We have to be able to measure that piece of content we then put on Twitter. So if the piece of content on television generated 2 million eyeballs, then on Twitter, another 5 million people saw it just because of Twitter's mass distribution. Social is actually one of the key ways that we can allow our content to travel and also aggregate an audience that might not be watching the show on Univision, but they're watching it through a device or some sort of platform. And they might actually just be watching the show, so to speak, on Twitter, and they're catching the highlights. Many times when our tentpoles or entertainment shows are airing, we are the #1 trending topic on Twitter for the night. Latin Grammy, Premio Lo Nuestro, Premio Juventud, we use a lot of analytics and data to measure how many people see a piece of content from linear or television all the way down to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So it is a very important part of what we do, and it's how we get compensated by clients for the results that we can measure.
Perfect. We have another very good question. What advice do you have for women trying to advance in their careers?
First and foremost, I would say that I'm not sure that I would give very different advice to a woman than I would give to a man, although I do think that there are some nuances that are important. I think the things that are similar are building a network, having advocacy and mentorship and sponsorship, and those are not the same thing. Having somebody advocate for you is having somebody who will say, Alfonsina did a really great job doing X, and that person ends up being kind of your champion. Having a mentor is exactly what it sounds like. It's, having somebody really steward your path through an organization. Sometimes it's somebody outside of your organization and somebody who takes a vested interest in you. And sponsorship is really what we all want. It's not just somebody who's vested in us, it's somebody who's invested in us and is literally making sure that anytime the question comes up of like, who should I be paying attention to, who should we be developing, that your name is at the forefront of the conversation on behalf of that person. I think additionally, as a woman, there are certain behaviors that, at least for me, I was not taught. I was not taught how to advocate for myself. It's not something that was culturally relevant for me, and I had to learn how to do in a corporate setting. It's something men do much better. As a woman, we're also not as likely, and this has been statistically proven, to accept praise. So I've taught myself over the years that somebody like Yvette, that is amazing. I won't say, oh, no, I just got lucky, or, oh, thanks, but, Alfonsina deserves all the credit. When the praise comes, the acknowledgement is the best thing you can do for yourself, just to say thank you. I think in the last piece about being a woman that puts us at a disadvantage because it's not taught to us is we don't know how to ask for what we're worth. And value has a lot of different facets. assets. Your worth and value can be financial. Nobody taught me how to negotiate salary. Nobody taught me how to put a dollar value in what I do. And I've had to learn how to do that the hard way. So I think those things are put us at a disadvantage just because I don't think most families, cultures teach girls how to do that, but they teach boys how to do it. So hopefully that answers the question just about, I think everyone comes in on the same kind of level playing field. I do think as women, we need to be mindful that there are certain things that we just weren't taught how to do, and we have to overcompensate for that.
That was for me. Like, I took all of that advice for myself. I just wanted to say for everybody to write their questions on the chat. We're taking questions. But I do have a question about success. How will you define success? What does that mean to you?
In the early stages of my career, success was about financial gain. I had this very arbitrary goal that I was going to make 6 figures by the time that I was 30. I don't know why. That was what I thought the metric for success looked like. This is also before I had children. It was also before I learned that I wasn't just focused on my career as the thing that was going to define me. Today's success for me looks like being happy in all of the different facets of who I am. Yes, I'm a mother, and that's important to me. So work-life balance for me is successful. I also have my own personal interests outside of my profession. So success is being able to spend equal amounts of time doing what I love professionally and doing what I love personally. Success is now planning for what does the next half of my professional career look like. The average woman in America lives to be over 80 years old, which means that for many of us, we can have not 1 but 2 careers. You can work 25 to 30 years in one profession and retire and completely reinvent yourself as something completely different for the second half. That is a challenge financially, but it's also an opportunity. I could literally quit my career as a media and marketing professional and go back to law school and get a law degree and be an attorney for the next 25 years of my career. So success is about holistically being happy for me and really making sure that I take care of all the different aspects of who I am and what makes me happy.
Excellent. That was a great answer. We have another question. If we believe the data, Latinos and African Americans have been most impacted by COVID. On a social justice front, what has Univision done to educate and support its audience during this time?
So for anybody who watches our news, I would say we've taken a very, very hard stance on making sure that we make information and knowledge available to the Hispanic community. We have a dedicated effort across our national and local news to make sure that Hispanic communities know where testing sites are available, that they know that there's no danger. I think, for many of us, I'm a first-generation American. I'm a U.S. citizen. I don't think about, is it safe for me to go get tested in my local community? I don't think about, is anyone going to ask me, am I a citizen or not? What documentation are they going to ask for? But there is a percentage of the Hispanic population who does think about those things. And so we've taken it upon ourselves to ensure that we are providing information that is timely, that is accurate, that is in culture, that is in language for our audience, knowing the things that they're concerned about. I think that the question, whoever asked the question, it's a valid question. I think that we are being disproportionately impacted, particularly in communities like New York City that are more metropolitan and urban, where lack of healthcare is an issue, where potential lack of documentation is an issue. So if you are in one of those communities, I would encourage all of us to make ourselves available as a resource for those that may not know. Knock on your neighbor's door. If you know somebody who lives alone, like in Washington Heights, where my grandmother still lives, there is a disproportionate number of people that are not going to the doctor to seek out medical attention. Either they don't have insurance or they don't feel safe in that environment. And the numbers of people that were dying in their apartments because they never sought out medical attention overwhelmed the system in Upper Manhattan. So Make yourself a good neighbor, do everything that you can in your own community, and I assure you that we are doing our share and our part to ensure that our community has all the information that they need.
Yeah, I mean, even putting a piece of paper on the elevator saying, if you need to do groceries, I'll do it for you. Anything will help. We have another question here. What tips or advice do you have about networking?
I actually had this question come up for me the other day from a good friend of mine that is a self-titled introvert. She does not like networking, and she said, I'm really intimidated about networking in the era of COVID. So I'm going to answer the question first about today, and then I'll give you kind of a little bit of insight about just broadly. If networking has been something that is intimidating to you, this is the best time to do it because all of it has to happen virtually. You don't have to worry about personal interaction. You don't have the awkwardness of having to walk up to somebody and introduce yourself. All networking is being done through the auspice of LinkedIn, email. I said, invite somebody for coffee over a Zoom. Like literally, you can send lunch to somebody and have never had to have an in-person conversation with that person. In my current role, I do a lot of outreach because business development is about trying to activate new business by selling. LinkedIn is one of the first places that I go to if I'm trying to make a connection with somebody. LinkedIn leads many times to an email, leads to an in-person conversation. For those of you that are younger, I've had many high school and college students reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hi, I'm a Latina from the Bronx. I'm interested in working at Univision. I'm graduating this year. Would you love to have, would you care to have coffee with me? And I've taken a meeting. So you'd be shocked and surprised how the use of social media can help you connect with people and allow you to network in a world that is now completely virtual and lacks any personal communication or interaction. So take advantage of that because I do think that it's going to open up doors for people to be responsive in a way that they hadn't before. Because for many of us, we're not in meetings all day long. We're not traveling here and there. Just being at home, I think for many of us has given us a lot more, we've become a lot more judicious about how we spend our time. And so I think it's more open to spending time with people who need their help.
Yeah. And let me do some advertisement here and said that we have a LinkedIn workshop for students next week. So you should go to our workshop. So I'm taking one last question, and I'm actually going to mix it with a question that I have for you. What's it like working at Univision, in which you're helping develop the Latin community, and you're also the board member of Junior Achievement of New York? Like how are these things? You do so much social work. So how has that been for you?
Joining the board of Junior Achievement has easily been the most gratifying experience of my professional career. It's a rare opportunity to marry what I do professionally and also be able to help my community. Alfonsina has been with me many times where we go into schools in the Bronx where you have young children that are recent arrivals to the United States, so they have no proficiency in English. Spanish is and continues to be their first and only language, and we take Junior Achievement materials into the school, and guided by people like me who are fluent in both languages, we're able to make a significant impact in the lives of young children who've never seen somebody like me, who went to college, who graduated, who speak their language, and to them, it feels so far removed, but I can be a role model. I don't think that I've had the opportunity to be as impactful in any capacity that I've ever worked in the way that I have been for Junior Achievement. Obviously, we do a lot of philanthropic work, but at the end of the day, we're really arming students with the information and the resources they need to make good decisions about things like financial literacy. Many of our children, Black and brown, are not taught the value of a dollar or how to spend a dollar. We go into schools and we teach them how to save, how to allocate, what the role of the bank is, and how a financial system works. And these are kids that are second and third grade. And we teach them about the value of their local bodega and their local bank. So this is the perfect intersection for me of professional accomplishment and achievement and the insane ability to be able to give back to my own community in a way that I had never imagined before.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That I mean, I love working with you, and it's such a pleasure, honestly, to have you as part of our like our board member. So that was our last question for the day. So I want to thank you, especially to you for joining us today, Yvette, and everybody who is listening. At New York, we have been working very hard to maintain this type of event. So if you are inspired today, we really appreciate if you make any donation, large or small, and you can do it by texting Johnny Inside Tomorrows, and you can say the amount you would like to give by sending the number to 50155. And if you're also interested in becoming a virtual volunteer or you have any questions, you can email us at info@johnny.org, and be sure to sign up for any upcoming events that we have. We have more virtual executive series coming up. And share with your friends to spread the word. Our LinkedIn workshop is next week, so be sure to do that too. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you guys so much.